Welcome to worship at the McPherson Church of the Brethren. We are an open and affirming congregation that strives to be hospitable and attentive to all of creation. We do not always meet that goal, and we have our share of ups and downs. But in the midst of it all, we continue to listen to God's call on our individual lives and the life of this congregation. We continue to seek to follow Jesus, peacefully, simply, together. We are humbled you have chosen to worship with us. Welcome.
Good morning. I'm Dan Lichty, and I would like to welcome you to the McPherson Church of the Brethren, those of you here in person or joining us online or on Channel 13. It is a beautiful Sunday to be alive and here worshiping God. It's always fun to see what beauty in God's creation Eric has picked out for us to enjoy before we start our service. Would you stand and greet one another, please? It's always fun to share together. What do you have to share this morning?
I have some instructions. So some of our hymns, it's funny, Ellen and I and Catherine, we look at our hymns and we're like, oh, descants, rounds, what are we going to do? And then we don't decide until 5 minutes before we get here. So it's not in the program, but you'll know. Seek ye first. We're singing it, I think it's just before Jerry gets to speak. You follow the screens, congregation. You're going to do the verse 1 and then the descant alleluias. And then go back to doing the verses. The choir will be dispersed amongst you and they will cover the descant. So you may hear somebody singing something different. Just follow the words on the screen, okay? I'm not going to conduct. You'll be fine, okay?
I'm Ellen Gilbert, your music coordinator. Next Sunday, December 1, is the beginning of Advent, and so just like last year, I'm planning to have pianists play for the 15 minutes before our service begins. So normally our service begins at 10:15, right around 10 o'clock. Please come and enjoy some pre-gathering music for all 5 Sundays in Advent.
Alan Manosselt. I just my sister and brother-in-law are here. That would be Linda and Phil King, and a daughter Lily, and 2 grandchildren, Ava and Leanna.
Welcome.
Good morning. Excuse me. Good morning. I'm Nancy Magnell, speaking for the outreach team. It's that time of year again when we launch our Christmas gift project. You may have seen our display outside the doors there. Those of you that have been around for a while know how this works, but I'll just briefly share for those of you who might be newer to our congregation. You see a tree out there that has angels all over it. Each of those angels represents a gift for a child from this area who has a parent who's incarcerated. And then the second display represents 3 families that we also are going to help out this Christmas. 2 of them were identified by Step MC, and the third one is an immigrant family who's not been in our community very long that we have been helping out. So on that display, there are Post-it notes which represent gifts for members of those families. So you may choose as many as you want, take it home and purchase the gift that's listed there, bring it back with the tag attached so we know who it goes to. And you may bring it back wrapped or unwrapped, and then we'll dedicate them before Christmas and deliver them to the children and families. So you don't have to remember all that. I put the main directions on these little slips that are sitting there on the table. So feel free to take one or corner me and I'll explain anything to you.
Yes, John Wagner, just speaking for myself. Having been a part of this congregation for about 60 of the last 70 years of my life, there's not a time that I can remember where music has not been a core part of this congregation in worship. And I was especially struck by that last Sunday with the choir and the special music that we had last Sunday that I just felt was incredible. And I can't think of another congregation that has the professional level musicians that this church is blessed with. And if you don't believe that, you should have been at the concert with Dan and Jean this last week at the Cedars, the piano duet, which was just a phenomenal concert. But every Sunday with Ellen up front on the keyboards and the Resonance Trio that we have as a part of us and all the piano players that we have, I hope that we never get to a point where we take music for granted, because we are indeed a very blessed congregation to have all the musicians that this church has and provide us with the music that is such a core part of our worship experience and has been that way for as long as I can remember.
Shane Kirshner on behalf of the Chancel Decoration Team. We're going to decorate for Advent this afternoon at 3 o'clock, so that's pretty short notice. If anyone would like to join us to help with that, Advent decoration, 3 o'clock this afternoon. Thanks.
Kara Hudson, speaking on behalf of the McPherson Coalition for Equity, Inclusion, and Diversity. I just want to offer a heartfelt thanks to everybody who participated in and attended the Transgender Day of Remembrance last Wednesday. It's always a small group, but it was just beyond meaningful for the people who were presenting and for the members of the transgender community who were here. So thank you to the church for this space, for sharing this space, and to all those who attended.
Well, let's get on with some more wonderful music. Uh-oh, Jerry. No singing, Jerry.
It would be memorable. I just want to take this moment to remember Leonier and his legacy and his memory and his history with not just McPherson, but in Quinter and throughout the denomination. And so our thoughts and prayers with Linda and with Leon's family as they remember all that he means to them.
Let's come together and worship.
As the choir is returning to their seats, don't sit down. I invite everybody to rise in body and spirit and join in our opening words and hymn. The sun rises and sets, the moon waxes and wanes. From shore to shore, God's creation sings. We offer grateful praise. From every corner of the earth, from all walks of life, from infants to elders, God's goodness is confirmed. We offer grateful praise. Blessings abound. Prisoners loose their chains. The weary find rest, and those who suffer are blessed. We offer grateful praise. May all creatures rise, may angels descend. May we, with songs of joy, repeat this grateful hymn of praise. Amen and amen. Please be seated, and will the children come forward for the children's time?
Hey, kiddos, how are you? Good. Got a couple more coming. So, anybody going any place for Thanksgiving? You're going to Oklahoma. What are you girls doing? It's a mystery, huh? What are you doing?
Staying at home.
Staying at home? What are you doing?
Family.
Doing what?
Family.
Good. Come on a little closer. And we have a new friend. You want to come down here? Are you going to sit there? That's fine. Tell me what your name is. Ava. Good job. And so you're here visiting family for Thanksgiving, right? Yeah, good job. So what is Thanksgiving for?
Time to be thankful.
Time to be thankful. Should we do that all the time? Yeah. We should say thank you a lot. But Thanksgiving's kind of one of these days where we kind of bring it all together and we remember to be thankful, okay? Especially to God, because we have so many blessings. So today, I brought donuts. Donuts, Thanksgiving. You think they go together? Yeah? Yeah? Do you ever thank God for donuts? Do you? You know, I've never really thought about thanking God for donuts, though. So I want you to pretend something with me today. I want you to pretend like you don't know what a donut is. Do you remember back to the first time you ever had a donut? And maybe someone said, let's go get donuts, and you're thinking, what is a donut? Okay? So I'm going to pretend like I have a donut, and it's going to be a bigger donut than this. What do you notice in the middle of the donut?
It has a hole.
It has a hole in it, okay? So I want you to pretend like you're going into the donut store, and the adult is with you, says you may pick out a donut. So you pick out a bigger one than this, and it has a bigger hole in it. And I'm thinking to myself, there's a hole in that donut. Why is there a hole in the donut? I should not have to pay full price for that donut because there's a hole in my donut. Okay? So I'm looking around to find a smaller hole because I'm thinking, I don't want this big hole. I want the biggest donut I can get without a hole because I'm paying for the whole donut, not for the hole. Okay? Does that make sense to you? All right. So in the meantime, there's a line behind me, okay? And I'm still trying to find the donut with the smallest hole, and everybody's kind of going around me because they're tired of waiting for me. So by the time I decide, okay, I'm just going to get a donut because I'm kind of hungry, what do you think's happened?
It's out of donuts.
They're out of donuts. You're right. I have completely lost out of my donut. I was so fixed on that little hole that had nothing in it. There was nothing there, but my brain was focused on that little hole. It wasn't focused on the donut. And so I missed out on the donut, didn't I? I missed out on it, yeah, because I was so worried about that hole. Sometimes we as humans, kids and adults, get so focused on things that aren't there, things that we can't have. Okay? Have you ever wanted a computer game and mom told you no? Maybe. Legos? So you have all the Legos you've ever wanted? No, okay, okay. So if you can't have that $200 Lego set, should you focus on what you do have and be grateful for what you do have? Yeah, we should. We should. We have so much donut in our lives. We have food, we have family, we have a home, we have schools, okay? We need to be thankful for what we have, not worry about the little silly hole that's in the middle, things that we can't have, okay? So I found a quote, and it says, as you go through life, this is your goal. Look at the donut and not the hole, okay? So as you go through life, focus on the donut, the good stuff that we have, not on the hole that we can't have, okay? What do you think you're going to take home with you today? A donut? You want a donut? Okay. I also have the quote that you can take home to help you to remember that we're going to focus on the donut and not the hole. Good job. So, do you want to pass these out? And the rest of you can come get a donut. And then you can get a paper, and you may go back to your seat. And I hope you have a great Thanksgiving. And I'm glad you girls are here with us today. Do you want a donut?
Thank you for your continued financial donations. You may give online at macbrethren.org. That's maccobb@macbrethren.org. If you are worshiping with us in person, you may place your gift in the offering box at the back of the sanctuary. Just slip it through the slot in the top of the box. Or you may mail your gift to the church office at 200 North Carey Street, McPherson, Kansas 67460. Or hand deliver your check to the church office. just push it through the mail slot at the Education Building. If you join our worship from afar, please donate to local needs in your area. Thank you for sharing.
Our lectionary focus comes to us this morning from the Gospel according to John 18. Pilate went inside the palace, summoned Jesus, and asked Jesus, "Are you the King of the Jews?" Jesus asked Pilate, "Is that your own idea, or did others talk to you about me?" Pilate replied, "Am I a Jew? Your own people and chief priests handed you over to me. What is it you have done?" And Jesus said, "My kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by these Jewish leaders. But now my kingdom is from another place." Pilate said, "Oh, you are a king then." But Jesus answered, "You say that I am king, and in fact, the reason I was born and came into this world is to testify to the truth. Everyone on the side of truth listens to me."
I want to start by saying I'm thankful that even as a hearing impaired person who can't read music or hear notes, that there's something very majestic and divine about hearing you sing that song. Truly, it feels saturated in the Spirit, and I thank you, and I'm thankful for you. Friends, today is a complex Sunday for Anabaptist. It really is. Or at least if first glance at Christ the King Sunday, it seems to carry a lot of layers that may or may not make us uncomfortable. Our ancestors avoided the lectionary for a long time. They did all they could to avoid following the mainline Little C Catholic Church. They did all they could to avoid what I would call the royal church. In fact, they were so adamant about avoiding the royal church that Mac and the others baptized under the shadow of night with the moon upon them in the Ada River because the German Lutheran prince surely would not approve of what was happening in the Ada River. So this is a complex, layered Sunday for us. It's also the last Sunday in the liturgical calendar. Next Sunday, full of all the hope that Advent brings, a new liturgical year begins. We welcome Cycle C and the promise of Christ's emergence and reconnection with creation invites us to be full of something new and beginning. This Sunday serves as that link between the old and the new. It also invites us to celebrate and to honor Thanksgiving. There's a lot of faith stuff happening today. And there's no way we can unpack all of it in one sermon, especially since it's music that you come for and not to hear a 50-year-old person expand on the text. But I have a question for us. What does it mean for us as Anabaptists to name Jesus as King? What does that mean? For 2,000 years, the church has struggled with what this means. To say Jesus is our King and how that might impact how we see ourselves, how we create ministries, how we engage with the world around us. To say Jesus is King isn't some little statement. It is political, societal, theological, and it has global ramifications. In fact, it is this reality that has inspired liberation theologians for ages. And we'll get there soon enough this morning. But today is also, as I've shared, a day to say thank you. It's a primer to Thursday's national holiday, a time to gather and to remember all that God has done and provided, a day to celebrate a bountiful harvest, if that were the case for you, or a day to pray for one in the next season. But even Thanksgiving, I am aware, has layers to it, especially if we look at it through the lens of the great light of the world that invites us to a new way of being. Thanksgiving is, in fact, complicated. I have struggled with this message, friends, because I have read and studied the pain-filled, oppressive, genocidal history that Thanksgiving honors. And so I hesitate to jump all in and invite us to throw huge parties in honor of genocide. But then, as I sat with that, I realized I'm tired of my own voice. I'm tired of the constant passion I have for liberation theology just sort of arriving in every message. And if I'm tired of my own voice, surely you're also weary of the constant messages. And so today, we're going to talk about good news. We're going to talk about good news. Because isn't that life? Isn't that the difficult journey of faith? Joining hands in a beautiful dance with one another and celebrating all that is good and godly in our lives, while also naming the difficult work that remains. It's okay to laugh and to live, even as the world rarely reflects God's love and goodness. Because I remember, friends, Jesus was called a glutton and a drunkard. I'm not advocating for either one, but it does remind me that maybe a faithful journey, a faithful story is one where we can indeed laugh freely, dance holy, and love when and whom we can. Always keeping our eyes towards the divine, looking for moments to co-create with God, a world that reflects God's goodness on earth as it is in heaven. So I invite you, I encourage you to fill your plates on Thursday. Pull out seats for loved ones. Adults, you sit at the kids' table this time. Young ones, you get the places of honor. Turn on the television, watch a parade, enjoy American football if that is your thing. Fall asleep in a chair in the living room as the day invites us to rest. Do all of these wonderful things and remember and honor God who provides and continues to provide. And as Barb reminded us, look at the donut, not the hole that is missing. It's okay to take a day, a moment, and just be present with one another around tables and in living rooms and even in annual football games in St. John, Kansas. Do it all. And I believe the triune God joins you and celebrates with you. That's part of today. Yet today is more than that. It's also recognizing that Jesus, Emmanuel, God with us, invited us into a different way to live, to love, to lead. Christ the King Sunday is a political statement, one that harkens us back to that discourse between Pilate and Jesus, right before Pilate sentenced Jesus to die. But before I dive into that cheeky give and take, I want to name what so many in our world, and the pericope itself highlights. What does it mean to be powerful? What is royalty? What is kingdom? Because today, like so much in our history and our past, kings and rulers were honored by their military might. They lived in large palaces, had huge amounts of wealth. And as we learned even from King David this past summer, a lot of these rulers ruled with unchecked power, and they abused it because they could. 2,000 years ago, as Jesus traversed Palestine, turning water into wine, dancing at wedding parties, breaking bread at Passover meals, Jesus encountered Rome's oppressive hand everywhere, would walk the dusty roads and see friends and family members strung on crosses as statements against anyone who dare oppose Rome. Rome made it very clear, oppose us, and this is your future. Roman soldiers acted like laws of human decency didn't matter because they treated anyone who wasn't Roman as less than human. They could stop and frisk and detain and do many more vile acts against anyone they saw less than, not quite up to par. It was law and order of the Roman Empire kind, and fear rippled through the Palestinian landscape because of it. Of course, people wanted things to change. They had seen way too many loved ones, friends, prophets strung up on crosses along the road. But they were afraid, and they dare not say a word. Rome did an amazing job of making sure that people knew their place. And I'm sure more than a few Jewish parents had to sit down with their adolescent children and have that talk about what happens if they're ever stopped by a Roman soldier. Yet, there were a few voices that refused to be silent. And to share above, as I stated before, their story often ended in a violent way. You know, State Farm insures a lot, but I'm fairly certain State Farm would not offer life insurance to Jewish prophets because the life expectancy of anyone pushing against Roman Empire was not stellar. It is to this setting, this reality that Jesus, Emmanuel, God with us, is born. It is a violent, oppressive, stop and frisk existence that just being Jewish meant there was a mountain already standing before you. What's even more disturbing, as we notice the story and read the stories, that it wasn't just the Romans who made life hard for the Jewish people. It is King Herod and the leaders that find themselves ascending into powerful positions. Well, I should say King Herod, as much as Rome would allow him to have that title. He might have been a king and he lived in a palace, but he knew his place because he understood Rome's policies and violent history and abuse. And he could have maybe worked with Pilate and others to ease some of the oppressive existence, some of the violence. But instead, Herod recognized the profit that came with being a puppet to Rome. Like the powerful lobbyist that the empire was to him, Herod took the money and ran. He made life harder for the Jewish people. He added taxes that not only built Rome's empire, but solidified his. Again, as much as Rome would allow. Pilate and Rome had no issues with Herod's acts because they recognized they were the marionettes and Herod was a puppet on a string. In this violent setting, the one of which Jesus was born into, no prophet had a chance. Not only did they have to face Roman soldiers in occupation, but their own king would silence them, imprison them, as John the Baptist soon found out. Yeah, State Farm wasn't insuring those folks. However, to this reality, a voice calling in the wilderness was born, one greater than John the Baptist, would breathe his first from a manger, would shadow his dad, the carpenter, would witness his people being harassed and bullied and oppressed and murdered. And to this reality, Jesus would find his own voice, a powerful voice, one that could not and would not be silenced by a cross or any other torture device, one that neither Governor Pilate nor King Herod could ignore. But Jesus was unlike any king that ever walked the earth prior to this day, and unlike any king to have done so since. Today's text captures this scene, this discourse between Pilate and Jesus, and I love it. It is cheeky. It is cheeky, and it is brilliant, and it illustrates Pilate's curiosity and his lack of fear, but highlighting Jesus' wisdom and his own wit. I thought perhaps, I'm not a screenwriter, but I thought perhaps imagining that we were crafting a scene in a movie, it might go a little something like this. Pilate sees Jesus, and the camera pans into Pilate, and he has sort of that evil grin that evil emperors have. And he says, "Hey, Jesus, are you the king of the Jews? Are you some new leader that we haven't heard about yet?" The music comes up. The camera pans over to Jesus, and he has this powerful, resolute look on his face. And Jesus just says, "Did you think of that yourself? Or do the Jewish people control you?" You see, friends, Jesus' question isn't about his own identity. He is questioning Pilate's authority. And he does so not with swords of steel, but with a sharp tongue and a cutting wit. In two questions, Jesus makes it clear that perhaps, maybe, Pilate, you're not as powerful as you think you are. Pilate catches on quickly. He's no dummy. The camera switches back to Pilate, and there's a stern reaction in his eyes to Jesus' cheeky questions. Maybe a little sarcasm rises in his voice, and a little laughter as he says, "Am I a Jew? Your own people handed you over to me. Your leaders gave you to me. What do they have against you?" At this moment, the drama builds more and the music lifts. Pilate surely feels like he's won this verbal sparring match. Nah. Jesus just smiles peacefully and retorts, "My kingdom is not of this world." The camera zooms in. "If it were, my servants would have fought to prevent my arrest by the Jewish leaders. But now, and no, my kingdom is from another place." Quickly, the camera gets over to Pilate, who thinks he's got it. "Ah," he says, "you are a king then." Pilate thinks this ends the debate, but it only opens the door to more. As the camera zooms once again on Jesus, peaceful music plays in the background, and Jesus exclaims, "You say that I am a king. In fact, the reason I was born and came into this world is to testify to the truth. Everyone on the side of truth listens to me. And then the camera fades. End scene. You see, friends, Pilate, not Jesus, names Jesus as king. Hold on to that for a moment. Pilate names Jesus, even puts it above the cross to the dismay of the Jewish leaders. And Jesus says, "I came into this world to offer a new way of being, a different way to experience God and God's reign." You see, a king, even in that day and in our day, would draw swords and cut off ears and incite fear. But Jesus as Emmanuel plots a way forward that honors the truth we find in Isaiah 2, that the people will turn their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. And nation will not lift up sword against nation, and neither shall they study war anymore. Pilate knew that Jesus could create a coup and get people behind him. Folks would follow. Jesus was charismatic and had a powerful following. But Pilate also knew that's what he wanted, because any coup against the Roman Empire would bring a swift reaction from a military that would wipe out an entire people. Jesus is aware of this reality too. Jesus knew to raise a military and raise arms against Rome was futile and will lead to the annihilation of his people. Friends, genocide is as old as the human journey itself, and genocide is a favorite tactic of an empire. No need to worry about uprising when military genocide is allowed, whether that is the form of smallpox-laced blankets or phosphorus bombs and blockades. This is how empires thrive and lead. Fear is an ally to the empire. But hope, friends, is the enemy. And as Jesus illustrates, it can't be a hope in a king or a queen who creates a coup, because even Martin Luther King Jr. highlights many times that to raise up swords against the United States government was opening the door to, well, there were many crosses, even in Jim Crow era, but instead of nails, they used ropes. And King didn't want to see more of his own people hanging from trees. God's reign, friends, doesn't ride in on powerful steeds or tanks, but through mustard seeds of faith and love. Love for self, love for neighbors, and yes, even love for our enemies. God's reign is a revolution, but it is one of peace and restoration instead of hate and destruction. Jesus got it. Jesus knew that violence leads to more violence. Jesus knew pushing back against the empire would lead to genocide. Jesus knew the Jewish zealots, like Judas Iscariot, wanted and had high hopes in his ability to raise a coup. That the Messiah, the anointed one, the one promised by God, would overthrow Rome. That's what Judas and the zealots wanted. Jesus didn't offer any of that. Jesus was unlike any king ever. Today is Christ the King Sunday, the primer to a new liturgical year and the Advent season. But the king we celebrate, the king we honor, preferred washing feet over shackling them. He chose turning water into wine instead of dumping diesel fuel into wells. He preached enemy love over bombing them into non-existence. Pilate knew that Jesus was a king, but Pilate never imagined just how powerful Jesus' reign could become. And Jesus did it without ever wielding a sword or destroying the other. Jesus' reign as king, like God's reign into this world, grows like a mustard plant. It starts small, almost undetectable, but then when it is nurtured, cared for, honored, it begins to grow and show us a different way of being, one that builds up instead of destroys, one that loves instead of hates, one that seeks justice instead of stop and frisk policies, one that honors God's creation instead of dominating it, and one that chooses peace as the only way to heal the world instead of violence. Friends, may we be like mustard seeds, the ones that Jesus taught so often about. May we continue to speak love and peace to the empire just as Jesus did. And may we do so to the glory of God and for our neighbor and our enemies' good. Amen. Will you please rise as you are able for the sending song? be seated for the sending words and remain seated for the sending music. All the amazing new faces we see among us today reveals the truth that on Thursday we celebrate all that God has done. We celebrate the love that God has created in the faces we break bread with around the tables, and those are divine moments. Celebrate them. We remember loved ones who aren't with us for whatever reason. But then Friday morning, we also remember that the love that anchors us to one another is the love that can conquer the most violent empire as it did 2,000 years ago. There is nothing that can silence love. There is nothing that can silence peace. There is nothing that can silence joy and hope, friends. Hope is the enemy to empire, and hope will lead us on. Go in love, go in peace. Amen.